Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Monday. Hey, good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Bob. How are you doing? How was your week?
My weekend was good. I had a good time. I'm sorry. I was trying to find something. I do something every morning when we start this to get it to a group, and for some reason the group didn't appear, and I was getting a little worried, but I found it. Operator error, like so often is the case.
It happens. Sometimes those things happen.
It's a Monday. It's the start of our year 2 of this program, so we had to figure something would be a little haywire, right?
We could figure that, or we could imagine, it's year 2. We're not gonna have any issues.
We figured it out. Took us a year, but we figured it out.
That's all right. All right, everyone. So if you're joining us later, this is the first time you're joining us. I'm Tom Brush. That's Bob Graham, and this is today's Antidote. On Friday, we celebrated 1 year of doing these broadcasts daily, and so this is the start of our second year. As we continue to move forward to help people take that next step, figure out what is the thing that might be holding them back, provide that one thing that might help them move forward so that they can continue on their own unique pathway to success. And
not you, Tom?
We all can continue on that next step along our pathway to success. Fair. Thank you, Bob, for bringing that. So I'm not exclusive of that group.
That's what I was curious about.
Yes. In 1 year, I figured it all out. It's all, now I'm actually right. I'm not have to worry about being real anymore. It's just, I figured it out. Yeah, that's not the case. So this week, we are going to be talking about, are you all in? Are you all in on what you're trying to achieve? Last week, we talked about what's possible. And I think the next step, if you can imagine what's possible and do some of the other things we talked about last week, it's like, now are you all in? And what do you need to do to be all in or to be considered being all in? Or it may be about really deciding, is this a hobby or is this a business or a career path that you really want to head down? Are you just testing the waters, or are you diving in head first because this is the direction that you want to go? And then you have to figure it out. So this week we're going to talk about how that relates to being all in regards to your knowledge. And before we do that, though, just a quick reminder, today's the day. So Bob, do you want to fill them in again?
Yes. Can't wait for 10 a.m. today Eastern Time and 7 p.m. today Eastern Time, because we're going to be doing an Eliminate Your Obstacles workshop. That's right. We're going to figure out with you what gets in your way, and we're going to find your way around that obstacle. I know it seems hard to believe, but Tom and I have been doing this with lots of people, with each of ourselves, and it works. The system we use, the process is so effortless, so amazing. You are going to have your whole business world rocked. That's today at 10 a.m. or this evening at 7 p.m. And I understand, Tom, there's some basketball to be played at 7 p.m. today. That's okay. This is more important than basketball. You will catch back up with your brackets. Your team, Illinois, probably already lost, or Virginia, or one of those teams, so you're already in trouble, like some of us. Go Baylor.
Plug for hoops. All right.
Priorities. By the way, I should tell you, Tom, we're international today because John Hansen's in Mexico, and I see him listening in. So he's probably got the beverage of his choice already prepared and listening to us. So we've got to do a really good job.
Like we weren't going to do a really good job before that. If John
should we translate to Spanish?
No. Not unless you're going to do that.
Me es Bob, su es Tom, SDS. Today's Antidote. There it is.
Very good. Now we can move forward.
Yes.
So I think if you, we'd love to have you join us. It's not too late. Bob, I'm sure we'll put the link so that you can register so you can get the Zoom link to participate. It is an online webinar. And we're trying, Bob, I think it is going to be an excellent opportunity for you to identify some obstacles. And even if you don't have an obstacle at the moment that you're dealing with that really has you stuck, one of the things we're going to talk about is a process that you can then use to help yourself the next time that you are stuck. And I think what there's that misconception is that we are all always moving forward. And I think what often happens is that truly we can't even see the fact that there's an obstacle that we're dealing with because we usually try to avoid it. Not avoid, like go around, over, under, whatever, is like not think about it and say like, yeah, I can just put that aside and it's not going to be a big deal. And typically when we try to do that, we are not able to move forward. And honestly, I think I've started to realize that sometimes obstacles, the great thing about them is that we gain knowledge from that. We learn a little bit more about how things operate, about what's going on. And that knowledge allows us to move forward and be prepared the next time something like that appears. And so I think it's a great lead in to how can we gather as much knowledge as we can to then move forward, to help us be better prepared for what's going to happen. What are your thoughts a little bit about knowledge as it relates to being all in, Bob?
Well, as you said that just now, Tom, it occurred to me that when something goes exactly as planned, that means that we understood it perfectly and we were clear and it went right as we expected. So we are in alignment with whatever we're trying to do. When things don't go perfectly, hence an obstacle stands in our way, that means that there's a lack of knowledge or a miscommunication, misunderstanding. It could be any number of those things, or just a faulty perception. You know, I could think that 8 a.m. is the perfect time to do these programs. Someone else could say, well, actually, I get up at 11:30 and I work into the night. I wish you would do them at 8 p.m. I would be like, no, I'm not going to do it at 8 p.m. That's the evening. Well, that's my world. For this other person, 8 p.m. is when they're in the middle of their workday. That doesn't mean they're wrong or I'm wrong. It just means that my knowledge isn't as full or robust as it could be. And I think for business owners, for leaders, for managers, it comes down to really understanding the people you're dealing with, whether they're your customers, your employees, your vendors, your partners. You know, I have certain vendors I work with, and I know that they like to pay over PayPal. Other ones like an invoice submitted, and one needs to know my employee identification number or employer identification number every single time. That's knowledge. The first time I billed that company, didn't get paid. It sat around, and then I said, "Hey, what's the problem?" They're like, "Oh, we don't have your EIN." Okay, now my EIN is on that invoice every single time, and I'm paid within 2 weeks. I didn't know that. I had an EIN. It's easy to get. You can go to the federal government, piece of cake. But I never realized how important that was, because for them, they track it and then they do the 1099 based on that, and they do it up front so that they're not at the end of the year scrambling going, Bob, what's your EIN? We paid you $10,000 this year. We need it now. They want it before they pay once. With that knowledge, whenever I deal with the corporation now, the EIN is on that invoice. I even put it in the email with the invoice saying, hey, by the way, here's my EIN in case you need to use it to track your records. And I also include a W-9, which is another form they need. So those things are helpful. I didn't know that when I started my business. I didn't know that until I didn't get paid for 3 months. And then suddenly it's like, hey, what's going on here? That's new knowledge. Do I think it makes sense? To them, it makes perfect sense. I didn't know that because my company is not that big. So there's a case where the knowledge gap delayed my payment. And that's a real concrete example. I think we have a million examples that you and I don't even know that are going on in our business day every day because our knowledge isn't exactly the same as anyone else's.
Correct. Because until we asked, we don't always know. And you don't always know the right questions to ask sometimes until you've done it. That's why they kind of bleed in, and we'll talk more about experience tomorrow. And I think that's the challenge, is we only have the knowledge that we have. And as much as we want to try to gain as much knowledge as possible, it's almost impossible to gain all the knowledge you need, because until you take that action, you're really unable to understand whether you had what you needed or not. You know, you went into that business relationship saying, okay, I just need to send them an invoice, because you hadn't thought about, or it just didn't happen, that you asked them, what are all the things that you're going to need to take care of payment? You just assumed, based on what are the things that had happened, that this is what you do. I'll send them an invoice and I'll be all set. So I think it's the challenge of, and I think this is when it becomes an obstacle, is if we worry too much that we have to have every piece of knowledge before we act, we're likely going to get stuck, right? And we're just going to sit and not really know what to do, and not feel like we should take that action because we don't know everything we need to know. In your case, you took an action based on the knowledge that you had. And in my regard, that means you're all in. I think all in is actually, you do everything you can to gain the knowledge that you believe that you need, so that then you're able to take some action, so you can have an experience and then figure out where things go from there. And I think sometimes I've run into a number of people who feel like, well, I have to get more information, and I have to get more information because I have to know everything I could possibly know before I send them out. I've seen it with people writing proposals. Like, if they don't have every single piece of information that they could possibly find, they're not able to put together a proposal that they think is valuable, because they're afraid they're going to be missing that one thing that someone is going to say, oh, we're only looking for this. And if you don't have this, you're likely not going to win the proposal. And I think for all of us, we have to figure it out, right? I mean, we hire a new employee. All we know is what we know and what we gain from them through the interview process, which typically doesn't mean what does their daily workday look like. Even if we asked, they might share, oh yeah, I prefer this, and this. This is the way I like to work. Yet when they are actually in that seat doing the job that they had never done before, we are going to gain more knowledge. We could never ask all the right questions to get to that point where we feel like, okay, I'm totally prepared for when they show up. Yes, you're totally prepared because you've done what you thought you could based on what you knew. And that allowed you to move forward, to take whatever the next action might be.
It strikes me that most of the successful entrepreneurs I know are the ones who ask a lot of questions. They really are constantly asking. Like, I have a friend who's an entrepreneur, and we went out for ice cream one day, or yogurt. And we're sitting in the yogurt shop just chatting. And he's watching their whole production process. And he's asking them why they have it set up the way they have it set up. And the employee, the manager, says, oh, we've learned that if we put these things in the front row, we will sell more of them. And there's a better margin. And, we sit back down, we start talking. And it's like, how can we apply this to your business? And we started to think through it. And that's the beauty of asking those questions. If you get up in the morning and say, I don't have every piece of knowledge I can have, then the way to acquire knowledge is to ask questions, to read books, to look at things, and not just go, oh, that's interesting, but why did they do that way? Oh, that's not how I would have done it. How did that work out? What can I learn from it? Because a lot of times I find people are like, all the information is available to them to acquire more knowledge, but they don't want to because they're so set that I know what this person needs. I know what my customer needs. I know exactly what they need, and that's what I'm selling. Don't tell me about anything else. And that friction point can be really difficult. I'm dealing with it with one of my newer clients, and it's difficult because it's like, anecdotally, and research, this is a bad idea, but he still wants to do this thing that is so 1983 and it's hard to get him to understand that. I've done the research, but he doesn't want to go out and ask the questions because he's in love with the idea. It was on the to-do list for the last X number of years. That's where it gets difficult. If we assume we know everything, I would argue we know nothing. And one of the things that really has helped me so much with clients and with my own business is constantly asking the questions. What would make people... Yesterday, I work with someone on a carburetor company, and yesterday I was running, and I'm like, what would make someone send their carburetor to be cleaned right now? And the idea came to me, a contest for the worst carburetor, the dirtiest, ugliest carburetor. Have a contest. And I was like, this is it. And we get knowledge when we go beyond what we are accepting. So to me, it's the what if game. That was the simple question as I ran yesterday. What would make someone send their carburetor to this company to get cleaned? Mm-hmm. Well, if they could win something.
Right.
And that's what I like about this whole idea of knowledge. As you get more knowledge and start to move down the road, you start to challenge your impressions. You start to challenge what you know, and then you get to creative ideas that can really solve problems in new ways.
Sure. And I think there's two sides to that as well. I think that people who ask a lot of questions can gain a lot of knowledge. I also think those same people who allow others to ask them a lot of questions allows them to think differently. That's right. Because the questions that they are going to ask are going to provide some sort of information. But someone else with a different perspective, different knowledge, different experience can ask them a question about something that they never thought of. And I think that's when you're in that place of being open to say, if I ask a question, someone is going to provide some information that might impact my knowledge base. And if I choose to have someone ask me questions, I am also going to find new ways, because they're going to ask me likely questions that I can't ask myself. I wouldn't have thought of. Some of the most challenging times I've had as a business owner is when my coach asks me questions. And I start to wonder, like, sometimes we have the knowledge, we just don't always apply it to ourselves, or we forget. And we know that, this is something. I mean, I can remember going to like conferences, and I would always go back to like the basic presentation, whether they had an early session for newcomers or, kind of a session 101. While I probably knew 98% of what they were talking about, some of it I had just forgotten or had not been implementing. And even though I had the knowledge, I had forgotten, like, you know what, that is why we do that. And I need to be more aware that that's part of the building block of what's happening. You get further and further down the road and you forget, oh yeah, this was so important when I was just getting started. Yet it is likely still as important as you move forward.
How about a couple of comments here? Tom, let me see if I can get to where I'm trying to get. There you go. Tim says, a key question. What can I learn from this? Great point, Bob. Thank you, Tim. John says, your true friends will ask the questions you hate. And I think that is probably one of the more insightful comments this morning, that if people are asking you the easy questions, you're not going to get to the better knowledge. The hard questions are, hey, this is the third time this has come up. What do you think's going on? You're like, I didn't want anyone to know that. But it's critical. So if you don't have that person in your life, that's probably an area that makes it hard to be all in, because you're not willing to consider other opinions as much as you should. Tim says, one of the biggest reasons I watch the show is because of the questions you to ask. They prompt me to look at things from a different place, which pushes me to expand my knowledge and drives new experience, which provides new perspective. Man.
He's got it.
We need to put Tim in the marketing department.
Yes. Well, I think that's, that's one of the things that I appreciate, about Tim and about many of our other listeners is they are willing to listen to something different, to someone else who has a different knowledge base or experience or perspective that shares, or, again, ask the questions. We could get on this show and be like, we're the experts. We're going to tell you exactly how to do it. And
we should try that one day, Tom. That would be really fun. Hi, I'm Bob, and this is what I know to be true.
Well, that's a lot of what you get, when you go to workshops or presentations. People
don't be dissing our presentations today at 10 o'clock and 7 p.m. I will not accept that.
No, I think that what we're trying to do, and I think what we have tried to do, is not just say, go do this, 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 this. We try to say, go ask yourself this question. And what are you coming up with? Go find this information for you. Here's what you need to do to run a workshop. You go out and spend a whole bunch of money on ads. Then you go through and put together a PowerPoint presentation that tells them exactly what to do. This is how to do it. Doesn't matter what your situation, what's happening, whatever. You have the magic key. Call yourself an expert and a guru. And don't let them share. They just have to take it all in. And I think the challenge with that is...
I'm laughing because I watched one of these over the weekend. And it was literally, the guy was yelling at people. If you do these things, you can't help but be successful. And I'm looking at the things that he's suggesting, and I'm like, 3 of the 4, I can't do. I do not have the capability right now to do them. It's literally impossible for me. And you can be a success.
Well, there's lots of ways to be a success, right? And it depends on how you define success. I saw somebody put a post up about like, what would provide you financial freedom? And the only answers were like dollar signs, dollar amounts. And this person's a very well-known, if you're on Facebook, you would know this person. And because they have sponsored ads all the time. And they're all plastered all over. And in this industry, they're everywhere. And I, just kept thinking that, well, okay, that's going to attract one type of person who actually believes that financial freedom has something to do with the number of dollars you have made. Which it could. For some, that's what they're looking for. And for others, it might be, I have enough money to do whatever I need to do. That's not very descriptive, not super clear. And it might be what's real for someone. And I think that that's the opportunity that you have when you run a workshop like we're doing today, is asking people questions and let them ask us questions so that together we figure out like, I had a client, we did our last session on Friday, and they shared that one of the things they liked about the working together was that I asked them questions. So I wasn't just giving them answers. I wasn't just saying, they would say, well, I'm working on onboarding. What does that look like? What would you do? And I would say, this is what I would do. They liked the fact that I would say, well, what are you trying to accomplish? Where are you trying to get to? Try to make them really think about, it's not just what I share. And they also shared that sometimes you provide me with information that I can use as an answer because I see the value in that. But I don't think I ever really share it as just do this. This is what always worked for me. So we're like, well, here's some things that I've tried. And this is some of the results that I've had. They haven't always been great results. And sometimes they've been excellent. And I've learned from all of them. And so I think to me, that's all about the message that we're trying to say, that being all in is different for everyone because everyone's pathway is unique. And so what I think I'm trying to accomplish, what you think you're trying to accomplish, while they have some similarities, there are differences. And everyone else who listens to this is at the same point. They have to decide what all in means for them. And if they choose that's what they want to do, okay, great. Now let's start to focus on what are the things that you need to be all in on. Knowledge. Like we could say, the only way to be all in is you have to read a business book once a week. Have to.
Winner.
And that's okay. That's what you'd say. I would say, yeah, I think that could be helpful. And there's a lot of other ways to gain other types of knowledge.
Or I could argue it could be unhelpful.
Right.
Because you'll have all this information competing in your head and you won't know what to do or what not to do. And if you pick the book that's on the wrong topic, you get distracted.
Sure. So I think that there's all sorts of ways. And I think it's what I love about the path that we are trying to help people with, is that it's theirs. It's not us saying, you got to do this, and this. It's like, think about this. How does this influence where you're at? And how does it help you think about moving forward? And I think if all of us think about that as the people we relate to, whether it's our clients, whether it's our team members, whether it's an organization, people in the organization we're trying to lead, is what are they all individually trying to accomplish and where are they trying to get? Now, ultimately, if you're leading a team, it has to be part of it about getting the team to go where they need to go for the organization. And where do they want to go as an individual? And I think that if we can help them do that, they are going to be more beneficial to the team.
So, Tom, what's that one thing today, as we're talking about being all in and as it relates to knowledge as a way of being all in?
So I would say my one thing would be kind of two things.
My one thing would be kind of two things?
Yeah, sorry. I haven't figured out how to do this any other way. One is to be willing to ask questions, because you're going to gain more information, more knowledge, and being open to being asked the hard question, because that will also force you to consider, what does it mean for you? And what new knowledge have you remembered or maybe gained because that question made you look at something in a different way?
I would add to that, Tom, that asking the questions is only useful if you really do listen to the answers. And the more the answer differs with what you think or what you expected, the more I pay attention to it. If I expect someone to say it's too expensive and they tell me it's too inexpensive, the light bulb goes off. I'm like, whoa, I'm way off here. I really need to figure this out. But so often I think people ask the question, but they're so busy trying to convince the person that they're not learning from that exchange. And you know how it is. If I ask a question, Tom, so tell me what you think about these morning programs. Start talking. I'm like, that's not true, Tom. You're like, really? And then you say something else. I'm like, Tom, that's not what I'm trying to do here. When we do that, we don't get the response. I've heard people say to me before, it's like, I ask questions, but people don't give me good answers. Why do they give you good answers? I'm like, because I listen. I don't make any evaluation. I'm like, wow, thank you for sharing that. That's really great. Do you mind if I write a note about that? And they're like, do you really take a note? I'm like, absolutely. People are very willing to share if you confront them in a way that says, I genuinely want to know your experience. We love to talk about ourselves all day.
Right. Well, and I think that's why the second part of it is important, because I think it's important for someone. Until I really had someone do that to me, I'm not sure I fully understood the value. The one of the years with one of my coaches where we had a lot of one-on-one calls, and I knew I almost turned on we did the Zoom call and I knew it was coming. It was just going to be, all right, either what question did they have prepared that they knew I need to be asked, or what statement would I make that would lead them to a question that I would walk right into the trap every time. Not the trap, but just walk into the, it's interesting you say that, haven't you recently talked about wanting to do this, and this? And why that's important. And then I would sit there and feel like, yes, of course. So I think I think you're right. It's being open to not only listen, but respond appropriately.
Well, but not to that person, not to refute it.
Correct.
The response is to take the information, walk away, and think about it, and then see if it affects what you're going to do and make decisions based on that. And I would also say don't knee jerk. If one person says your price is too much, that might be that one person. If five people say that, I might start paying attention. If 10 people said it to me, now we've got something we have to deal with. Because I see all the time people are like, well, someone didn't like my business card, so I ordered new business cards. I'm like, if I ordered something new every time someone didn't like something, I'd never get any work done.
Well, sure. And I think there's the difference of do they like it or is it effective?
Right.
And we'll get into that, I think, more tomorrow when we talk about experiences.
Okay. Well, Tom, we should probably wrap it up, don't you think?
I believe you are correct.
We've got 2 workshops to run, one at 10 a.m. Eastern Time and one at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, eliminating your obstacles. You can go into our Facebook group and see all the details and register and be there. It's going to be a great day of discovery. Can't wait for that. And in addition to that, Tom, we always have our Facebook group that people can join. So why don't we run the promo for that to close things out? Because they might be going, where can I find people that ask questions? Where can I find people who are all in? Where can I find the kinds of things you're talking about? It's in this Facebook group.
Yes, indeed. So join us. It's easy to find once you hear about it. It is just go to Facebook, search Ring of Renegades, and just ask to join. It's a private group because it is a community that we're creating of over 900 members and growing, who are helping to trying to help one another take their next step. So here's some more information about it. We hope to see you inside of the group. And if not, we'll see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for our next edition of today's Antidote. Have a great day, everyone.
Carving your own path is tough. You want and need a community to offer you insights and advice, share inspiration, provide support, and save you time and money. But where do you find all that? Here's the easy answer: the Ring of Renegades Facebook group, where leaders, entrepreneurs, and business owners identify their next steps. Here's some of what you will find at the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. Just go to ringofrenegades.com and join today. Find and accomplish those next steps.